What do you do with a cover crop when it is time to plant? We're going to talk about that in today's video. Hi, I'm Amy Landers with GardensThatMatter.com, where we believe your garden is the key to better food, a better life, and a better planet. Now it is early spring here in western North Carolina. We're about 1 month out from our last frost date, and we are starting to think about getting ready for planting. So it's time to terminate this cover crop. We're gonna kill this cover crop so we can get ready to plant other things, our food crops. Now this is part 3 of our cover crop series, and we're gonna include links for part 1 and part 2 in the description with this video. In part 1, back in September, about 6 months ago, we planted the cover crop. And so we talked all about why we use cover crops, how to get started with them, and also a little bit about the mix of plants that we used. In our November update, part 2, we talked more about the different plants in the mix and kind of the roles that they played. We are big believers in polyculture, multiple different species in your garden, because of the great synergies you can get by having different plants with different roles in your garden. So now one of the roles of this cover crop is some early flowers. You can see the turnips and the radishes, they've survived the winter. We had a pretty mild winter, so they didn't winter kill, but now they are feeding the early pollinators, which is great. So we definitely have some areas of this cover crop that we are gonna allow to continue growing that'll be used for our summer crops. But the row garden and some of our wide beds need to get terminated so that the material can start to break down, because we're going to be planting some of our earlier crops in those beds. So what does that look like? In this video, we're going to talk about 2 methods you can use, one sort of high tech and one super low tech in your own garden. It's going to be super easy for you to use a cover crop and get it terminated so that you're both building soil, creating mulch, creating green manure, adding organic matter to your soil to feed all those good microorganisms, and then being ready to plant come spring. Now there are many different ways to terminate a cover crop, and so we're just showing you 2 methods that we use here. In permaculture, we learn about appropriate technology, which is thinking about the appropriate level of technology for the task at hand. So how can you use something energy efficient, environmentally sound to manage what you're doing in your garden or around your property? So we're definitely going to talk about a manual system, and that one is the one that you probably are going to use in your backyard. But this area where I'm sitting right now is about a half an acre. It's called Grandpa's Garden, and Grandpa loves to use his tractor. So first, let's talk about this mechanical method for terminating your cover crop. If you have a tractor or access to a tractor through a neighbor or a grandpa, then you can look at using something like a Crimp roller, which terminates the cover crop but leaves it as mulch on the surface. We don't have that tool, but I'll include a video with more information about that in the description for this video. We're gonna use a bush hog, which is basically a big mower. We're gonna mow the cover crop down, and then in a few days, Grandpa will come back and either disc or plow this into the soil. He's gonna incorporate it into the soil. It's gonna serve as a green manure, adding organic matter, feeding those microorganisms in the soil. Then a couple weeks later, we're gonna give it a couple weeks to break down. We'll come back and lay off the rows and then plant our corn and our beans and our sunflowers, all the things that we grow in the row garden. Now for many backyard growers, a tractor seems just silly. It's overkill, right? It's not appropriate technology. So if you're growing in a raised bed or a wide bed, you can definitely use a manual method to terminate. So one of our favorite tools for cutting down a cover crop is a corn knife. If you've got something like a thick stand of rye or another like thick cereal grass, then a corn knife is going to be awesome for you, because you can use it and get that cut down really quickly. And then you're basically doing what we call chop and drop. You're cutting it off and then you're dropping it on the surface where it's going to act as mulch. It'll continue suppressing weeds and it'll continue feeding those soil microorganisms. Now with this raised crazy mix, we were finding that the corn knife was both cutting and pulling things out. Like the turnips and the radishes were just getting pulled out by the knife. And so often in this bed, we ended up just pulling the cover crop and then laying it down. Again, it's gonna serve as mulch. It's going to be suppressing weeds and feeding those soil organisms, which are so important in our gardens. And here's the finished product. It's all laid down flat, chopped and dropped or pulled and dropped, And some of these turnips are crazy big. So some of these we may have to come back and chop up so that they'll decompose. And we did bring a few in to eat as well. But these turnips, the grasses, the clover, all the things in this mix are going to be breaking down, protecting the soil, providing mulch, feeding those soil microorganisms, and building healthy soil, which is exactly what we're going for. Now, I have to admit, there's something a little sad about seeing all these plants on the ground no longer growing lush and green. The boys and the dog have really enjoyed playing in the cover crop, and so the time for that has come to an end. But that's all right. There's going to be other ways to play and explore in the garden going forward as we move into the growing season. Now, if you have grown cover crops, I would love to hear about it in the comments down below. Let me know what you've done, how you terminated it, what worked for you, and what didn't. What questions do you still have? Let us know if you found this video useful with a like or a share. And if you'd like to dig even more into cover crops, come on over to gardensthatmatter.com. We have a whole module about using cover crops to build healthy soil in our Foundations of a Happy Garden course. That's our premium course all about composting, mulch, cover crops, all the things you can do to build incredible soil in your garden. I hope you have the chance to get outside and enjoy some sunshine soon. Until I see you again, happy gardening.